I didn't move to Cypress Ridge to make friends. After 3 decades in the Coast Guard, chasing hurricanes, pulling fishermen out of freezing waters, and enduring the kind of politics that erodes your soul, I was ready for silence. I found it in a rustic, pine-flanked property just outside of town. 1 acre. No HOA. No nosy neighbors. Just a cedar cabin, a wraparound porch, and my prized possession, a custom-built hot tub sunk into a redwood deck like a crown jewel. The hot tub wasn't just for relaxation, it was my sanctuary. Deep enough to float in, heated by a solar-assisted coil system I designed myself, and treated with chemical precision. Every night, I'd slip in with a glass of bourbon and let 30 years of back pain and bureaucracy melt into the steam. For the first time in my life, I exhaled without pressure. Then came her. Karen. She introduced herself 2 days after I moved in. Marched right up my front walk in tennis whites and a sun visor, flanked by 3 kids sticky with juice and entitlement. Clipboard in hand. "You must be the new neighbor," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Karen. I manage the Cypress Heights HOA. I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not part of the HOA. She waved that off like a gnat. "Oh, I know. But we like to keep the community cohesive. You'll find it's easier if we all follow the same guidelines." I didn't respond. She glanced around my yard, eyes narrowing on the hot tub behind me. "Lovely setup," she said. "Though I'm not sure open tubs are child-safe. We do encourage fences." I crossed my arms. It's on my property, and no one's children should be near it. Her smile thinned. "Just something to consider." Then she turned and left, kids trailing like ducklings. I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. That weekend, I stepped outside in my robe with a steaming mug of coffee and froze. Karen's 3 kids were in my hot tub, full splash mode. Toy boats, foam noodles, water guns. One of them had a sandwich balanced on the filter panel. I charged over. "Hey, get out of there, now." They looked up, unfazed. One of them sprayed me with a squirt gun. I jerked backward, coffee splashing down my robe. Karen appeared at the gate, my gate, without a hint of guilt. "Oh, they're just cooling off. You weren't using it." "This isn't a public pool," I snapped. "It's private property." She scoffed. "You can't expect to keep something so visible and not tempt the kids. Maybe think about covering it." My hands clenched. "Or maybe you could think about parenting." She gasped, actually gasped like I'd slapped her. Then she called her kids out, muttering something about some people being hostile and bad energy. I drained the tub that night. Spent 4 hours disinfecting it. Recalibrated the chemicals, replaced the filter, scrubbed out the grime. It still didn't feel clean. The next morning, I installed a new latch on the gate and a no trespassing sign. Big, red, impossible to miss. 2 days later, the latch was broken. The sign was gone. And the kids were back in the tub. That time, I caught them just as they were climbing out. Their towels, my towels, were draped over my porch rail. Karen emerged again, unbothered. "They thought it was okay. You didn't say anything last time." I stared at her. "I want them to stay away from my property. This is the last warning." She crossed her arms, her smile now completely gone. "You're not very community-minded, are you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. By the end of the week, she'd sent a formal-looking letter, printed with the HOA letterhead, even though I wasn't part of the association. It demanded I remove or obscure the aquatic fixture within 72 hours or face escalating action. I laughed out loud. Then I read the fine print. It wasn't a legal document, but it looked official enough to scare someone less stubborn than me. Unfortunately for Karen, I wasn't that someone. I tossed the letter into the fire pit and poured myself another bourbon. But in the back of my mind, something had shifted. The quiet I'd fought for was gone. My sanctuary violated. And something told me this was only the beginning. The lock lasted less than a week. This time, they didn't just break it, they removed it. Unscrewed the entire latch like they had every right. I found the hardware dumped in my flower bed, buried beneath crushed petunias and footprints caked in mud. The gate swung open like it belonged to them. I checked the footage from the motion sensor camera I'd mounted after the second invasion. There she was, Karen, in broad daylight, supervising as her kids stormed into my backyard like it was a playground. She stood by the gate, sipping an iced coffee, while one of them dragged a floaty ring up the steps of my tub. That wasn't carelessness. That was deliberate. I called the sheriff. He showed up an hour later, younger guy with mirrored sunglasses and a smug smile that made it clear he wasn't taking me seriously. Well, he said, scratching the back of his head, technically, there's no physical damage to the property, so it's kind of a gray area. She trespassed. On private land. I've got it on video. He nodded.
Right.
I'll file a report. But between you and me, I'd let this one go. Karen's husband golfs with my captain. You don't want the headache. I stared at him. You're telling me to let it go? I'm telling you it's not worth escalating. It's just kids having fun, right? I closed the door without thanking him. So that's how it was going to be. Karen had protection. And I had a broken latch and a tub full of soggy juice boxes. The next day, laminated flyers appeared on neighborhood mailboxes, including mine. In bold block letters. Warning. Unsafe aquatic structure. Please keep children away. Issued by the Cypress Heights HOA Safety Committee. I wasn't in the HOA. I'd never agreed to be. Yet here was Karen, extending her iron grip beyond her jurisdiction. I tore the flyer off my gate and crumpled it. I walked straight to her house, knocked hard enough to rattle the doorframe. She opened with a smug tilt of her head. Can I help you? You and your kid step foot on my property again, and I'll press charges, golf buddies or not. Her eyes narrowed. You're creating division. This community values harmony. I value boundaries. She smiled coldly. You really should have joined the HOA. This wouldn't be a problem if you followed the rules. I laughed once, sharp and joyless. Whose rules? Yours. She stepped closer, voice low. You can be stubborn, or you can be a neighbor. But you can't be both. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. By the time I got home, my mailbox had been egged. The security camera had been yanked from its mount. I found it lying face down in the grass. No recordings. That night, I sat in the hot tub for the first time in weeks. I kept the lights off and the temperature high. Steam rose around me like fog, masking the stars. I could still hear her kids laughing across the fence. Oblivious. Protected. Entitled. They'd turned my refuge into a target. And Karen? She declared war, without saying the words. The next morning, I woke up to find the ultimate insult. The tub was half drained, water trickling down the deck steps like a wound. The lid had been pried open, jammed sideways, hinges bent. Inside was a mess, mud, rocks, and what looked like crushed cereal bars. A fat, spray-painted sign had been hammered into the cedar beside it. Unsafe, restricted by HOA Ordinance 14.3. Ordinance 14.3 didn't exist. I knew that because I downloaded the entire HOA bylaws just to check. This wasn't about rules. This was about power. Karen wanted control over everything she could see, and my refusal to kneel made me dangerous. Non-compliant. An outsider. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly understand, was that I dealt with far worse than her in my life. Storms, politics, pirates. I knew how to play the long game. How to wait. How to prepare. She thought I was just another grumpy retiree with a sore back and a fancy tub. She had no idea who she was messing with. And if she wanted to see dangerous, I'd show her dangerous. Next time, the water wouldn't be the only thing boiling. Karen thought I'd fold. Most people did. That was her game. Intimidate, escalate, control. But what she didn't count on was that I'd spent years dismantling threats far more dangerous than a suburban dictator in tennis shoes. This time, I wasn't going to the sheriff. I wasn't sending emails. I was going to speak her language. Spectacle, disruption, and dominance. So I made a few calls. First to Ramirez, an old Navy buddy turned seafood caterer. He laughed so hard, he nearly dropped the phone when I told him what I had in mind. You're really gonna do it? I'm done playing defense. Next, I called Harris, a welder who owed me a favor and knew his way around high-heat custom jobs. He arrived 2 days later with a truckload of reinforced steel panels, a portable induction heater, and the kind of grin that said, "This is going to be legendary." Together, we spent the next 48 hours transforming my hot tub into something no HOA manual could even imagine, a precision-controlled, saltwater lobster boiler. Harris insulated the interior with a high-temp lining used in military-grade steamers. I modified the pump to withstand heat spikes and installed a triple-sealed safety lid. A smart controller managed the water temperature to within half a degree. And then, I added the lobsters.
Dozens of them.
Big, red-clawed, Maine-born monsters. They thrashed as we lowered them into the brine, claws rubber-banded, antennae flicking. Ramirez handled them like art, calm, practiced, unbothered. We weren't just cooking seafood. We were sending a message. Saturday arrived like clockwork. Clear skies, kids laughing down the street, HOA flags flapping in the wind. I stayed inside, sipping black coffee and watching the security feed. Just after noon, the usual pattern unfolded. Karen's youngest popped his head over the gate, checked for signs of life, then pushed it open and waved his siblings forward. They made a beeline for the tub. The moment one of them yanked the lid open, a scream tore through the yard.
Ah!
There's giant bugs. Another scream. A slap of wet footsteps retreating across the deck. I stepped outside slowly, calmly, holding a metal skimmer like a staff.
They're not bugs, I said.
They're lobsters. Today's menu is surf and stay off my property. Karen came barreling through the gate seconds later, red-faced and wild-eyed. What is this? My tub. My dinner. You know, the one your kids keep breaking into. You're boiling animals in your backyard? She shrieked. That's psychotic. No more than raising pigs or grilling steaks. Just a little marine cuisine. I smiled. Perfectly legal. Checked with the health department. She pointed an accusatory finger at me, hand shaking. You did this to scare my children.
I didn't blink. No, Karen.
I did this to keep them out. Consider it effective deterrence. She reached for her phone. You're going to jail. Please, I said, gesturing to the tub. Tell them I cooked dinner on my own deck. When the sheriff arrived, this time a different deputy, older, with a handlebar mustache and zero patience for nonsense, Karen launched into a theatrical rant. He's terrorizing children. That tub is a death trap. The deputy turned to me. You got lobsters in there? I nodded. Salted water, 198 degrees. Completely sealed. No danger unless someone climbs inside, which they shouldn't be doing anyway. He scratched his head, trying not to smile. Well, you're within your rights. Backyard's fenced. No ordinance against boiling crustaceans.
Karen's jaw dropped.
I demand you file a report, she screamed. The deputy chuckled.
Sure.
I'll file a report that your kids trespassed again. Want me to add the part where they broke the gate latch? Karen turned white. The crowd was gathering now, neighbors with phones out, filming the scene, murmuring. I recognized faces. People Karen had bullied over fence heights, mailbox colors, and holiday lights. Now they were watching her unravel. Ramirez stepped onto the porch, holding a tray of steaming lobster tails glazed in lemon butter. You boys hungry? He asked the deputy. Karen stormed off. The deputy accepted a plate and gave me a nod. Enjoy your evening. And just like that, the tide turned. That night, I hosted a backyard boil. Invited the whole street, except Karen. The smell of garlic, butter, and sea salt wafted across the block while music played from the porch speakers. Laughter replaced tension. Neighbors I'd never spoken to shook my hand, clapped me on the back, and shared their own Karen horror stories. It wasn't just about the lobsters. It was about reclaiming peace. And I wasn't done yet. Because while Karen licked her wounds behind closed blinds, I had one final message to deliver. One she couldn't ignore. Karen went quiet, but it wasn't surrender. It was retreat. The kind where a predator backs off just long enough to regroup. I'd seen it before. In men, in storms, in bureaucrats waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Karen wasn't beaten. Not yet. 2 days after the lobster boil, I received an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a notice of community violation, complete with an HOA seal, accusations of unlawful animal processing, environmental contamination, and public endangerment via unsanctioned heat source. It was laughable. A bluff. But an aggressive one. I penned my response with surgical precision. Attached photos of my deed, property line markers, and correspondence from the city verifying that my land fell outside the HOA's governance. Then I CC'd a lawyer friend and printed a copy for Karen. I didn't mail it. I delivered it in person. She opened her door half an inch, I twitching. What do you want? Just bringing you the facts. I figured you could use a reminder of where your authority ends. She snatched the folder and slammed the door. The next morning, a for sale sign appeared on her lawn. But she wasn't finished just yet. That week, she began her final push. Flyers circulated the neighborhood again, this time warning of ongoing wildlife cruelty, complete with a blurry photo of my lobsters and some fake quote she attributed to the Humane Society. She started patrolling the block like a neighborhood warden, clipboard in hand, inspecting yards, peeking over fences. She even tried to push an emergency HOA meeting to propose boundary expansion that would forcefully annex non-member properties like mine. A long shot, legally flimsy, but it showed just how far she'd go to keep control. I didn't panic. Instead, I prepared for the meeting. I wasn't invited, of course. But I showed up anyway, with receipts. Literally. I brought copies of every time Karen, or her kids, trespassed. Video stills, photos of damages, timestamps, even statements from neighbors she'd harassed. And just for theatrical flair, I carried a silver platter holding a perfectly cooked lobster tail, glazed with garlic butter and topped with fresh dill. The moment I walked into the HOA clubhouse, every conversation stopped. Karen turned white. "I don't believe you're authorized to be here," she said stiffly. "You're holding a meeting about my property. I'm here to set the record straight." She tried to speak again, but one of the board members, a guy named Duncan with a thick mustache and the look of someone who'd finally had enough, held up a hand. Let him speak. So I did. I laid it out, all of it. I passed around the documents, showed the surveillance clips, presented the property maps with red lines Karen had repeatedly crossed. Then I said, "I moved here for peace, not conflict. But this woman has harassed, vandalized, and defamed me under the false pretense of authority she doesn't legally hold. I've shown restraint. That ends today." I set the lobster platter in the center of the table. This is what triggered her last tantrum. A cooked crustacean. Meanwhile, her children swam unsupervised in a tub that wasn't theirs after she broke the locks and ignored warnings. You tell me which one of us is the problem. The room stayed quiet. Then Duncan cleared his throat. "Karen, we've reviewed your recent complaints and the evidence presented here. Effective immediately, your enforcement privileges are suspended pending a full review. And this board will not pursue boundary expansion." Karen's lips parted, but no sound came. Her hands trembled as she gathered her clipboard and stormed out of the room. It was over. The next week, she was gone. House sold. New family moved in, a couple with a friendly golden retriever and no interest in clipboards. I kept the hot tub, but I never boiled lobsters in it again. That was a one-time message. Now I used it for what it was meant for: quiet.
Healing.
Neighbors waved when they passed. Some joined me for beers on the deck. Even Duncan stopped by once with a Tupperware full of ribs and a nod of thanks. Cypress Ridge felt like a neighborhood again, not a battleground. And as for Karen, I heard she tried to join another HOA in a different part of the state. Word is, she brought her clipboard to the first meeting and got voted out before dessert. Some people never learn. But I had. Peace isn't given. It's claimed and defended if necessary, even if that means turning your hot tub into a boiling lobster trap.